Okay, I'll just say a quick hi, everyone. I am popping a link in the chat, and hello, everyone watching this on YouTube. There's going to be the same link that I just posted in the chat in the video description. It's just a link to the SSHRED Seminars WordPress page, where you can have an overview for all the great presentations that we've had so far, because today we've already at the 13th SSHRED seminar. So SSHRED stands for skateboarding, sustainability, health research, and environmental design. And we're a collective, research network, artist collective, all kinds of things. Basically, we are people interested in skateboarding, skating of all kinds, BMX as well, and well-being and creative engagement with the waste that we are producing, this creative practice that we do, wheels-based, art-based, music-based, and so on. And so we have the seminar series. All the seminars are recorded. For everyone participating today, the recording will stop once you have the opportunity to ask questions. So if you want to ask anything personal and so on, we understand that, of course, and we will stop the recording then. So no pressure there. I just want to make it quick. We've got an amazing session coming up on the 17th of April, which will be a roundtable, meaning and placemaking in BMX. And we will have incredible people like David Camilleri, Yin Ding, and Michael Wilkinson sharing their insights on BMX in Australia and in China. And yeah, it's going to be a great opportunity to learn about what the peers in the BMX world are up to.
Oh yeah, so just adding to that, Ben, we also have Dermo as well and David Craig, who are also joining and doing some really amazing reflections on their work as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Indy. Yeah, so we got great stuff coming up. So yeah, feel free to check out our socials. We are updating our socials, the WordPress. And yeah, if I can think of anything, I will chime in at the end. But for now, I'm really keen on listening to Natalie's and Talia's conversation. Let's go.
Thanks, Ben. And thanks everyone for coming to our Pulse Check, the 13th SSHRED Seminar, Lucky 13. And Natalie will be hosting with me a conversation about the highs and lows of skateboarding's history to help empower and reconfigure a healthy, inclusive community. And I'll pass the floor to Natalie, who is a librarian, skateboarder, and researcher. Thanks, Nat.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'll just begin. I'm here in Powell River. It's on the Womxn traditional territory, north of Vancouver. I'll just give you some background about who I am and just how I found myself sort of back involved in skateboarding. I'd actually wanted to skate in the 80s. I was 11, 12. My brothers had skateboards, but I kind of got the impression that you know, I should be pursuing other sports. It was kind of a stigma with skateboarding, but that kind of piqued my interest. I'm like, you know, what's up with this? I want to get into it. So at age 17, I found my brother's old board, Santa Cruz, just started skating to work. And, you know, I also had a lot of friends who were skateboarders as well and snowboarders. So I was part of a community. And I just, yeah, had this feeling that I wanted to prove something. And then I eventually moved to Vancouver to go to university. There's an amazing crew of female skaters there. And I remember in 1998, I was at a girl's house and she had brought out this box of like old vintage skateboarder magazines from the 70s. And I was just like so blown away. Like I had no idea that there was all these women that used to skate in the 70s, and I recognized Cara Beth Burnside, and there was like at least 25 women in there, photos. And I was clueless and kind of felt deprived of this history that had been happening. And yeah, so that was a seed that was planted. And then I ended up moving to Montreal in around 2000 to do a master's thesis. I had another great crew, the Skirt Boarders in Montreal. And there was a chapter on skateboarding history. And I actually tried to pitch that idea to create a book because I had a publisher who'd got a friend who got a book published. And they told me, oh no, we already have a book on skateboarding. So I was kind of bummed, like, so it kind of percolated. Like I still really wanted to create a book, and I moved back to Vancouver and I was writing this like skate history column for a zine. Michelle Pizzell, who runs Antisocial Skate Shop, she had the zine called Idlewood. So it was always like on my mind. This was something I wanted to do. I think it kind of evolved into this like mini ebook for like it was a Skatistan fundraiser back in 2014. It was like really small scale. But then, you know, adult life came along. I kind of faded out of skateboarding. I became a librarian, which is, I think, a fabulous pursuit. And but I was still accumulating zines and just name of skaters, things that interested me. And then finally, I returned to skateboarding in my 40s, 2019. There's a really fun park where I live. You should come visit me. But I kept having these sort of funny conversations, like, you know, the Olympics was about to happen. And I remember this one guy he told me like, oh no, there were no female skaters before the women's battle at the barracks. That's like 2019. So to him, there was there was nothing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there is still a void. Like there's people who aren't maybe aware of this like fabulous history that we have. So I kind of got a kick in the butt during the pandemic. Like, you know, as a librarian, I shouldn't be hoarding all of this stuff. So, I should probably put it out there. And actually, I got a bit of motivation because Ian Borden in 2019 put out his book, Skateboarding in the City. And he'd actually, he quoted my thesis. I think he thought it was a PhD, which was like, oh, so cute. And it dawned on me again, like, okay, so yeah, that was to me a pretty superficial account of women's skate history. So yeah, let's ramp it up. And I finally joined Instagram and got connected, and it's just evolved into something crazy. Like it's Smithsonian had me over for like a skateboarding panel and advisory panel, and like recently Thrasher magazine stepped up with an interview, and I'm just having a blast. Like I'm finding my own heroes and mentors by interviewing women who kind of weren't really acknowledged in the past. And yeah, I've just been really encouraged by how things have evolved in the skate community. And I feel like, oh, I can see Kevin Marks there, Look Back Library. Like I've got a whole new sort of community, even though I'm technically living in a pretty isolated place. So yeah, it's just been a blast. So that's the preamble to how I got here.
Thanks. It's really great to hear about your background and just how you've come back around to being so actively involved in skateboarding more recently, and that pathway. So in your abstract, you make a reference to Rebecca Solnit, and I was curious why her words resonate with you in connection with skateboarding.
Oh my gosh. Actually, I've got the book here because I'm a librarian, so this is that I was talking about. Yeah, Recollections of My Non-Existence. So if you don't know Rebecca Solnit, she wrote the essay in 2014 called Men Explain Things to Me. And it also helped coin a term, someone else coined the term mansplaining. And so I thought that was like a fabulous essay. So I picked up this biography, and it talks about a lot of her time as like a punk feminist in the 80s in San Francisco, and just sort of the backstory of her essay and her research and just her passion for like writing nonfiction. And it's a beautiful book, but you know, it addresses topics like sexual violence and rape. And it's like, you know, she could easily have been justified to be a very angry person, but instead she emphasized how like sustainable activism needs to be rooted in love. I loved it. And so she compares our broken society to like this, you know, shattered ceramic bowl, and it's undergone Japanese kintsugi. And that's just like when you bond together the fragments, actually using gold lacquer. So it becomes even more beautiful and stunning. And it's just a whole new process. And I was thinking, yeah, sometimes, you know, skateboarding mirrors society. We do have a broken past. There's been some things that are, you know, pretty unsavory. But I think if we acknowledge sort of issues and solutions as a community, we can sort of really distinguish ourselves from the dominant culture, which I think is important in today's culture, as a form of rebellion. And, skateboarders are, they love to be rebellious. It's part of our nature. And that's going to mean condemning sexism, racism, homophobia, hate, greed, fascism, the works. So that was sort of my kickoff point, this book. I just thought it was beautiful, and being a librarian, recommendation of the day, I had to push it.
Thanks, Nat. And that's, yeah, I really agree with that perspective, and I think that's really beautifully put. So for you, what are some of these key highs and lows also in skateboarding history that can indicate whether we are a healthy or broken community at different times?
All right, well, next up, we're gonna do like a total whirlwind through history. I'll try to condense it into like 15-20 minutes. It's kind of, I've cherry picked some things that really interest me, so I'll share the screen. All right. Can you all see that? Fabulous. Okay. Yeah, so mentioned in my abstract, my opinions are biased, and my talk, it's coming from a perspective as a female skater. So I'm fully aware, like I may not be representing, someone who owns a company, part of the industry, and I might actually be in opposition to some of their experiences. But I think I've got some interesting anecdotes. My goal isn't to be like a fault finder. I'm not trying to condemn any particular person or company or decade. And I also note, like, poor behavior in the past, sometimes it is a reflection of the times, maybe mirroring attitudes, sexism of the times, but we all have a choice. And so, and I also have to say, like, throughout this timeline, there are individual men who have been allies and supporters. And, they might say like, oh, this stinks. Like, there should be a category for girls to compete, or they even take a risk and condemn violence. So I also know that we all make mistakes in our youth, and we can all mature and apologize and make things right. So there's lots of opportunities to offer grace and change. So that's where I'm coming from. Let's go. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so 1960s, right from the beginning, skateboarding is something that anyone can pursue. You've got 2x4 roller skates. You can make a setup. And I've got a photo here of Lee Zaremba and DJ Cobb. This is 1959. And the article says, the girls have been sneaking into the sport too, braving the occasional scraped knee or skinned elbow to skim the cement with the guys. So right from the beginning, we're part of it. There's also Patty McGee, rest in peace. I think she's one of the most recognized skateboarder ambassadors. She traveled across the country for Hobie skateboards, appeared on television, of course, the 1965 Life magazine, she was on the cover. Yeah, and that issue was just like full of photos from Central Park of Bill Epridge, and it just showed the diversity of skaters. They're experiencing, this joy, boys, girls, adults, different cultures. So I really love that. And my favorite high from the 60s is La Femme. That was the first sort of all-girl girl gang, essentially 1963. It was Colleen Boyd Turner, Donna Cash, and Susie Rowland. And they just exemplified how you can find, when you find like-minded friends, you can create a hype team. So, right from the beginning, get a hype team. And all of these girls participated in the International Skateboard Championships in May 1965 in Anaheim. And this was televised by ABC World of Sports. And I love it because the contest footage is equitable. Like, they're interviewing the girls, the boys, regardless of gender. And the overall champion, if you see on the right, she's winning a scholarship. That was Lori Turner. So she got the same prize package as the boys, which was a $500 scholarship, custom-made Hobie surfboard, dinner at Disneyland. How fabulous that skateboarding started out like that. Yeah, I just love it. And also a cool thing about Lori Turner was that in the 60s, so she was actually like a child of divorce, when there's a lot of stigma in the 60s, but because of her connection with skateboarding, she was a champion. She was cool. She could leave her home where there was a lot of attention, go into the streets and skate. So And that's kind of a universal thing that sort of still happens. So I just love that. But yeah, there's some lows. So literally like the week after that Lee Zaremba article, it was countered by another article sort of condemning skateboarding is risky. And there's all these doctors saying, oh, there's injuries, broken bones. You know, skateboards were pretty sketchy, poorly made. And yeah, but the interesting thing is that in the article, they said that a lot of the injuries were actually adults trying to demonstrate how to skate to kids. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt. You know, the skateboarding started to be called like the devil's toy. City officials and police, they really didn't like this, you know, collective action of kids, the chaos out in the streets, and it was threatening. There was no adult supervision. So you kind of see this battle start to unfold in the media. And yeah, actually, even Life magazine, they countered that all these beautiful, joyous photos with an article that said skateboard mania and menace, a teeter-totter on wheels is the risky new fad. So there's this constant sort of battle going on. And the worst news story, the saddest thing was actually Clarissa Carter. She was 5 years old and she was killed in April 30th in 1965 in New York. She was on a skateboard and a speeding police car ran her down. And the story was shared across North America, hundreds of newspapers, but the headline was skateboard kills girl. Skateboard kills girl. And just how the media distorted it. It was a speeding police car. And I was like, that's fascinating. They really used this opportunity to condemn skateboarding. And yeah, and it was really sad. And I also found out, I think they made an excuse like, oh, we were speeding because of a fake bomb threat. It was total bullshit. So I just found like the emphasis actually in that article was like, parents, you must control your children. The blame was like entirely on the skateboard. That was the cause of death. So from there, it was like skateboards were banned. There was lots of fines. It kind of died. Next up, let's just keep going. So 70s, we're back on a high. And I noticed like even after it was banned, there were still kids skateboarding and it never actually disappeared. It just kind of went under the radar. And by 1975, there were people innovating these urethane wheels. They were trying new products, designing things, and they were starting to gather at places like La Costa, the Black Hills in California. That was like brand new concrete, and organizing grassroots contests. So again, we're back to this sort of grassroots, good times, collective joy, and we're back on. And the progression in the 70s is staggering. Like, I'll keep it brief, but like by the 1978, like we're seeing contest divisions for girls, boys, sponsored, amateur, like all these different ranges of abilities. Like, yeah, everyone's on board. Publications like the National Skateboard Review with that was edited by Di Dutzen Rose. She had lots of female skaters on the cover, and it was just yeah, really dynamic, really grassroots. She started to establish contest rules and structure. More glossy magazines like Skateboarder came out. They had the Who's Hot feature, which interviewed a lot of women, and also worldwide. Like it's just booming. Yeah, oh, gotta mention this girls' night. This is something my favorite thing. Even back in the 70s, skate parks were organizing girls' night. So you can see there were 150 girls that would come out regularly and gather together. And I interviewed a woman who said this was her thing. Like she would go to different parks for the girls' nights. So I love that. Yeah, and I think also like the women's movement, women's live movement was really sort of creating change for us, driving women's rights forward. There's a bit more diversity. Like the 60s was pretty whitewashed, but diversity is happening. I just put a photo of Cheryl Thornton. She's competing against the boys in 1978 in Fort Worth, Texas. Very cool. There is over in the UK a regular column called Kate the Skate, just all about the girls. And yeah, so things are happening. There's positive action. Terry Lawrence, who I believe is sort of the pronouns are he, him, but wanted to be recognized as a female pioneer back in the day. yeah, he said that because skateboarding was so new and exciting, creating its own voice with a rebellious element, he could be that gender queer child, skate with aggression and be like accepted. So there was just a different level of acceptance. And I think we're also seeing the effects of the protest movement. Collective activism is happening. There's a woman named Debbie Bennett. She organized Free Skate LA because her point was that, you know, skateboarding was still technically banned, but she felt that all youth should access skate parks, but you have to drive there, you got to like pay fees, which were getting more expensive. And she predicted that eventually skaters would be branded as outlaws if the attitudes didn't change. And that's kind of exactly what happened. Yeah, she was right. But I think part of the issue was, yeah, there was an industry that kind of moved away from its grassroots. They were really intent on contest results. There was company teams versus like kind of a flowing community. I put in Kim Adrian's photo because she was a skater in the late 70s. She got injured. She was riding for Sims and she was still really pushed to compete, and it kind of ruined it. She was just eventually kind of like, screw that. Contests, you're starting to see things happen like the women's events are kind of at the same time as the guys, or they're like at 8 in the morning when there's no spectators. The prize money, you're starting to see things get, you know, increasingly wider. So like $100 for the lady and 800 for the dude. Yeah, so things are starting to change, and I think it's got a lot to do with, you know, capitalism and commodification. Actually, I've got a great quote from Vicki Vickers in 1979. She said, yeah, the money isn't the same. I'll be damned if we're not out there breaking our necks just like the guys. We're catching air, we're coming out of the pool, and we're coming on strong. But we're going to fade out if that's what the media coverage wants. I'm pissed. So she was just like, she really went to bat for women, but she could also see like, yeah, things are getting imbalanced again. And, you know, you'll hear a lot about the closure of skate parks. I think Ian Borden covers that quite thoroughly. And it really also impacted the scene for girls because that was a relatively safe space for girls to go to versus like an abandoned pool. So, and I'm also worried about, there's kind of this mythology around masculine aggression, like pool skating versus, you know, freestyle. It's where women kind of really thrive. They're often gymnasts. So there's kind of this division of genders and what's hardcore. And I'm not going to get into this too heavily, but yeah, the predatory behavior. Part of my project with Women Skate History is I do interview a lot of women, and they share things with me that are just devastating. And yeah, so there's a lack of accountability. Like one woman was like, "Oh, I could never tell anyone at the time because this guy was a pro skater," or in Jana Payne's situation, it was the team manager. And yeah, and so there's this kind of this buried history where these problems aren't really talked about. Yeah, so it's been an interesting part, and I have written about it a lot in my book. But we're going to move on. I'm just flying through it. 1980s highs. So even with the closure of skate parks, like, and this industry crashing, yeah, I think it really solidified our scene as a youth subculture. There's joy in being an underdog. Like, it's kind of awesome. And, you know, your opposition to your parents' culture. There's like punk activity, DIY spirit. If you want to look it up, the Hags were a really cool girl gang in 1983 in LA. Anarquia were Brazilian company with female skaters. So yeah, things are pretty awesome. And I think that zines played a major role. This is, you know, DIY publications, and originally marginalized communities, queer communities utilize zines. It was their way of creating information newsletters during the AIDS pandemic. So that's kind of where the roots of zines really happened. And yeah, and that was embraced by skateboarders and women and the Riot Grrrls. Another great thing in the 80s, Bonnie Bluin became the first female columnist in Thrasher. She had the Skater's Edge column. And she was talking about a whole wide range of issues, but I think she really became a voice and hero for women. Yeah, she talked about some of her situation, and she had really hoped She had this vision for like a national girls club, a contest division for girls, our own video. And it's amazing because it did actually happen. There's a zine called Ladies Skate World by Lori Cooley Wong. And she started posting announcements. That's up in the top right. She was really trying to rally a club and say, hey girls, like let's get together and convince you know, the skate contest organizers to have a division for ourselves. And again, sort of grassroots community. Lynn Kramer really stepped up for that, created the Women's Skateboard Network. Got the zine Equal Time, which is sort of the masthead for that club. And I believe like they had a circulation of 1,000 copies. And it really told isolated female skaters, like, you're not alone. Like there's more of us out there. I'll just, actually here's some great photos of, I think on this one is the Labor Day skate contest in '99. There's the crew. Eventually Skaters video came out. So pretty awesome. But yeah, there's still some lows in the 80s. 1981, ASPO, which is the Association of Skate Park Owners, they decided to eliminate a girls category, an amateur girls category. And it wasn't actually because of participation, like Cara Beth Burnside was there. There was a crew of girls who were competing, but I think it was supposed to be a kind of temporary cost-saving measure, but it really hurt female skaters to be having to like merge in with compete against the guys, and you know, you don't always see their contest results. And then you find when skateboarding rebounded in the later 80s, there wasn't any interest in returning to a kind of resuming equitable opportunities. So it was just like, oh, girls, suck it up, or compete with the guys, stop complaining. And some did do that, but they're buried in the contest results. And it was really more about this celebrity culture and commodifying and the male hero. And I know that Bonnie Bluin actually felt quite betrayed by the female skaters in the 70s because it was this disconnect. There wasn't this legacy of people to mentor her, but she actually didn't know that, like, for example, Patty Hoffman, who was a pro in the late 70s, early 80s, her company Powerflex, they told her like, no, you can't have a signature board. There's no market for it. So like, there's reason why they're so bummed out and maybe didn't continue. And even Terry Lawrence said, in contrast to the 70s, this is a quote about the 80s, that it was male dominated, heteronormative. It was a lot of, this is gay, you're a fag, you're a dyke. And when you grow up in that kind of environment, there's a lot of fear. Kids shut down and they don't feel safe to be who they are. And there was a lot of fear regarding, queer culture, and it played into sort of the whole poser mentality and authenticity. And I think it's just about insecurity and fear. And meanwhile, there's like some guys in their 20s, like they're making a lot of money. And I think it's rooted in greed and vanity. And anyways, moving on. 1990s. I showed you that photo of skaters. That was, Ethan Hawke stepped up, and the first all-girl video came out in 1992. There was 14 women in it. Pretty damn awesome. We've got the Riot Grrrl movement. They were really about protesting sexism and violence in like the punk music scene. They used zines, they demanded safe spaces, and accountability. And actually I found that there was a lot of skaters who were actually Riot Grrrls. And I think it might explain why Thrasher kept getting like a barrage of really like angry letters from women during the 90s. And fortunately they printed it, which is fabulous. But I love this DIY mentality. I think it's pretty cool. And you'll see, like, the guys weren't going to do anything for us. So we had to really step up. And Patty Segovia, for example, she was part of that Women's Skate Network. And she ended up launching the All-Girl Skate Jam in '97. And that was a great outlet for women to get together. Rookie skateboards, there's the photo on the right there. Very cool initiative by Catherine Lyons and Elska Sandor. They were in New York working in skate shops, and they just like were sick of the sexualization of women in skateboarding media. So what an innovative company, a very diverse team, very cool design and vision. Obviously, Alyssa Steamer, Toy Machine, Ed Templeton really stepped up. But he said in 98, when they announced that she was going to be pro, he said 50% of the kids were really pissed. They thought that they were just as good as her and that they were worthy of being pro. They judged her purely on her tricks. The other 50% were writing in support of Steamer and coming to her defense. So yeah, there was like, guys were feeling threatened by her, and it was, yeah, pretty wild. But again, like, you know, we were utilizing zines. I mentioned a few really awesome zines. Gunk by Ramdasha Bixim was, she was a Riot Grrrl. Check it out. That was a Brazilian zine. They started out as a zine and then evolved into a glossy magazine. And they were just pissed. They kept hearing about like girls getting beat up at skate parks. Like it got pretty toxic. Villa Cola out of San Diego. That was actually the first zine that I ever owned, which was fabulous. Yeah, very creative, very dynamic. And one of my favorites is a zine called 50/50 Skateboarding and Gender by Xana. She was in Portland and she just went to bat. Like there was a lot of pornographic images and things wheat pasted and graffiti that was very fat phobic. And she just went for it and kind of protested that. So very badass person. I'd love to beat Xana. So yeah, there's just a few images of Gunk, Villa Cola, and check it out. And I kind of realized like all my highs are sort of related in opposition to the mainstream. So yeah, another low is just like lack of accountability. We had Mark Gator-Rogowski charged with rape and murder of Jessica Bergstein. That was in 92. And he was really hero worshipped in the 80s. And instead of the industry really addressing this tragedy and sort of condemning violence, things just kind of went unchecked. Things got worse. There was more violent boards and ads and sort of an entitlement that festered and just rumors about what happened. And some people could even justify the behavior of Gator. So actually, and as well, like at that same year, that video Skaters came out, you know, 14 women, no reviews, no nothing, no acknowledgement at all. It just kind of fizzled. And I've got this photo here of Jody McDonald because this came out in August 1993. Before that, there were 29 issues, like over 2 years of Transworld not showing a single photo of a female skater. Like, what a fucking low. Like, that's just so brutal. So I remember finding that image and just being like, thank God. Yeah, and I'm not going to get into Big Brother, but I just will say, like, that publication, it kind of became a magnet for companies that they wanted to target teenage boys. It kind of really this base, like, jerk-off level. And I know some of it was written in sarcasm, but I don't think the audience had, like, the bandwidth to figure that out. So, you know, they were there for the porn. It was not a community building venture. Oh, yes. And I'm just going to quickly sum up the 2000s, like, yay, the internet, woohoo. Yeah, there's more community building when there's no gatekeepers. So we've got online communities and forums. I mentioned the Skulls, they were out of Australia, very cool. Skate Like a Girl actually came about in 2000. It was because of this Riot Grrrl festival called Lady Fest in Olympia, Washington. It was a 6-day festival. So they had their first workshop then. Mentioned Lisa Whitaker. She was, that's the photo down there. Just fabulous person, 80s, 90s skater. She wrote for Rookie, and she was like, oh, I gotta film my friends. And so she started accumulating footage for the website's Girl Skate Network. And then her footage resulted in the Getting Nowhere Faster video with Villa Cola 2004. Also AKA Girl Skater, that was the Australian tour of the Galas team, 2003. Very cool initiatives. So yeah, it's pretty sweet happenings. Women's Skate Alliance, they had a big protest in, I believe it was 2005. It was like Carabeth, Jen O'Brien, Mimi Noop. Like the X Game was only allowing them to do a demo sport. And they're like, no, we should be like, our division should be proper contest. We should be like televised. So yeah, more community action, female-led companies like Cherry Skateboards, Hoopla, Meow. And they just recognized like these female skaters, they deserve to have board sponsors. So yeah, they stepped up DIY and just made it happen. And I think social media and just how it decentralized things, and people were able to represent themselves. Yeah, here's covers of Getting Nowhere Faster, aka yeah, I'm not going to get too much into the lows, but I think all of these unchecked issues that we've seen, it impacts mental health, addiction, isolation, loneliness. If we're not willing to sort of talk about things and it's all just about selling boards and representing a sponsor, like, we really get hurt. Yeah, but yeah, obviously I think things are a lot better. I put things in some historical context, so I think things are fabulous, but definitely still can learn from our history. So I've babbled. Let's go back to question and answer. So thank you for letting me take you on this whirlwind tour.
Oh gosh, I would not call that babbling at all, Natalie. Thank you so much for taking us on that journey. Like, wow, it's so valuable that you've archived all of this and dug it out. Like, a lot of this is from primary research, I know, that you've done, and interviews and your own digging in archives with your specific skill set, which is
obsession.
I mean, yes, we're just so lucky to have you doing this for the whole global skate community. I think your skills are such a treasure. So thank you so much.
Wow.
So yeah, wow, lots to digest there. So what would you say are then the major lessons we can learn from skateboarding's past to make sure that we maintain and continue to create welcoming communities going forward?
Yeah, throughout this, like, I'm sort of seeing patterns, like highs and lows, when the skateboarding industry is popular or when it's successful or not. And sometimes when the industry is hurting financially, there's kind of this like knee-jerk reaction to claw back on any effort to be diverse and inclusive, and just revert to catering to the guys. And like I mentioned in 1981 with the shutdown of the amateur girls contest division, like, yeah, that's pretty hurtful. And yeah, I almost had to wait like 20 years with Patty Segovia to come back and sort of restore that. And yeah, that took a long time. That was brutal. And like, I showed you that picture of the Villa Cola ad with Getting Nowhere Faster. So I put that up there because Transworld, actually in 2004, they're like, oh, I think it was Scott Pommier, who rallied for Lori D to have this like feature. And it was supposed to be every second issue of Transworld. There'd be like a ladies sort of feature and collage and everything. But after 4 issues, they were like, oh no, things are getting hard. We need to sell those 2 pages to advertisers, like 300-page magazine. And just, so why did they do that? Like sort of revert, and it's, yeah, obviously monetary, but I'm really hopeful that, like, I think, there may be a recession happening. We're in some pretty crazy times, and I'm going to be monitoring it. Like, I really hope that things are like, oh, no, paper's so expensive, we can only, celebrate the dudes, the pro team. Like, I'm worried a little bit. So I'm just kind of saying that right now, like, don't abandon ship when it gets hard. Community is so important. It's great to have some funding and money-making ventures, but, maybe not depend on it, especially, if your values are going to be compromised. And I also noticed, like, in the past with every new generation, they're kind of almost in the dark about their history. Like, I remember in the 90s, like, my reaction, like, I had no idea about the 70s or the 80s. And yeah, I hope that the industry kind of keeps honoring the past. Yeah, I think we're safe. Like, I've got this project, I'm not going away. But like, I don't know, I just don't want to see things kind of roll back, and I just want to maintain this welcoming communities. And I think it helps having diverse leaders in the industry, like women, people of color who are like judges, coaches, photographers, like owning companies, just like editors, the works. And yeah, so I just think it's important that we stay on track. Like, yeah, we may have a broken past, but like, just keep rebuilding, keep forging on with this. Like, I think we're on a really good trajectory. But be aware that there's some context, there's some things that have gone down. Let's not go back. Let's keep moving forward.
Thanks. That's some really sound guidance, I think.
Yeah.
So moving along, then you were recently at the Slow Impact Skateboard Festival in Tempe, Arizona. Can you tell us about your recent experience there?
Oh my gosh. So I think, pulse check, like that is a fabulous indicator of health. So I went there 2 years ago. I presented like a paper on zines in the 80s and 90s, and it was, relatively male dominated. And I was a little bit nervous, but people were really engaged. Like they asked a lot of questions with genuine interest in learning. And then the other panels, like they were just fabulous. Investigating sobriety, looking at the genocide in Palestine, like really engaging with issues and not shying away from things, which is so important. And like this year was even more inclusive. There was a Skate Like a Girl session. The Good Push was there. They had an impromptu round circle. Shout out Rhiannon. I was just really inspired by, this movement to really question things and not just be, I don't know. And I was on a panel. Jessie Van, she's very cool, first Canadian pro skater. She's editor of Mess Mag and was a rookie skater. And as well, Cole Nowicki and Joa Fields were on my panel. And I just think they're awesome because like they've utilized their platforms, their media platforms, to call into question things like, Chris Cole and the allegations against him regarding domestic violence. Like they called bullshit, and they use their platform to talk to like their mostly male peers. And I just think we need more allies like that, just to be courageous. And so it was fabulous. So you can go. I highly recommend that you go. You'll be blown away.
Great, good tips for us for next
be
holiday.
Inspired.
So how then can the skateboarding community persevere in spite of political powers that are causing this kind of pain and upheaval that you were describing a couple of questions ago?
Yeah. I don't know. So yeah, we've got this history. We like to consider ourselves punk and countercultural. Sometimes it's just privilege repackaged, but ideally, like we're into this. So if there is a rebellious streak in skaters, and we like to sometimes be the underdog, like the Women's Skate Network, it was empowering. Like it sounded pretty awesome to be like the underdog. I think we can channel that. And it's showtime with like Trump's administration. We have a shared enemy, and we can be in complete contrast to that. His intention is to be divisive, generate sort of hate and anxiety. And I think, we just have to come together and be rogue. And, with a lot of the American institutions, they're being forced into a position of eliminating diverse histories. Like it's crazy. Like even NASA, like they purged 2 graphic novels for girls about like female astronauts. And then there's like the Smithsonian has been challenged to sort of really whitewash their history. And there's been the removal of the reference to trans and queer people in like a Stonewall memorial. Like this is insane. So like, we can step up. We do this. We know how to be countercultural. So it's painful though. Obviously there's a lot of people getting hurt and there's like around the world and violence, but like I just want to encourage us not to be paralyzed by that, and just gather that community and be empowered. It's scary times. Oh my gosh. That's what I have to say about that.
Yeah, and these bullies really depend on our fear. So I think you've got the right idea there. So do you think of your work with creating a skateboard history archive as a form of activism? Is that how it is for you?
I think it's becoming like that. Like I started out writing bios. I wanted to kind of fill a void in history and get to know all these fabulous people. And so, but now I've started to call it like the archive is the wrath of a skater librarian. Like I don't know, I'm just like systematically, I'm just putting out content and yeah, it's sort of, there's sometimes this attitude like, oh, there were no girls skating when I grew up in the 90s or whatever. And I'm like, hell no, like I got all this information and yeah, and I just like combating archival silence, like that's Trump's whole mission, archival silence, like so that the dominant story is the one that gets told. And yeah, I'm not into that. And I am confident that there are some very like rogue archivists and historians who will sabotage his intentions, and they're doing that, like the Internet Archive, like it's happening. So it's not all bleak, but yeah, and if I can contribute in a small way with this weird little niche rogue archive, like I'm just gonna keep doing it. Like I'm pumped.
Yeah, that's clear. Your enthusiasm is pretty contagious. It's very illuminating to think of an archive as a rebellious act of archiving, and I like it. So in what ways has this project and skateboarding itself been a healing and healthy outlet for you?
Well, yeah, I came back to skateboarding in my 40s. Yeah, actually it's been it challenges me to like stretch and be more physical. Like it was painful coming back, like back spasm every time I tried to ollie. But so yeah, physically it's been great. But also like I think I was kind of angry. Like I have a Me Too story as well, and I'm not gonna yeah, it's not the place I want to get into it, but like when you've got hurt and bitterness, I find it's more constructive to do something positive for others, and I think that has really, I'll get emotional, but it's been really healing for me. Like I've talked to so many other women, like a lot of those women in the 70s I mentioned. Yeah, actually, and I didn't plan on doing this, but the book that's coming out, which is called Girl Gang Zines and Power Slides, A History of Badass Women Skateboarders. The last chapter, I go into it, and my publisher asked me to be present, which I originally, like, I wasn't totally comfortable doing that. Like, I'm extroverted right now, but I am quite introverted in my day-to-day. But I went for it, and it was really healing. And Jenna Payne talked a lot about grace and just being like not condemning the culture, but trying to find ways to move forward and healing. And yeah, I'm not being articulate, but it's been really powerful for me. And yeah, I'm just so relieved and grateful for all the people I've met through this, because yeah, I never could have imagined any of it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for opening up and sharing all of that. And for sure, like some experiences definitely reach beyond words. And I think you're so eloquent with how you've communicated today. So that's that really shines through, and your enthusiasm really shines through. So thank you so much. And can we finish off by telling us how and when and where can we buy the book, please?
So yeah, hopefully pre-ordering, usually I think a few months in advance, so May or June pre-order, but the book is coming out technically September 16th, 2025. Yeah, Michelle at Antisocial, she said, well, we'll have a party. And actually, I believe it's going to be the 10th anniversary of Stop, Drop, and Roll, which is sort of a contest that Rose Archie has been organizing for female non-binary skaters in Vancouver. So hopefully it all aligns like that week, and it's just going to be, yeah, super fun party. Yeah, just still in the final editing phase, but feeling pretty stoked. I think Indigo, I've roped her in for to be one of the book blurb review person. Yeah, I'm very excited to share that out. And
that's September 13th, you said?
16th.
16th. I'm gonna write that in the
I'm so
chat.
excited.
September 16th, book launch.
So we should definitely try and think about an Australian tour for the book
Oh
talk.
my gosh, that would be the dream.
In Vancouver.
Yeah, so I'll keep everyone posted. Just no, it'll be a party. I've got a friend's band. They're called K-Car. I think they're all girl band. Gonna play. So
Great.
oh
I love this van full of people attending this call. So I think with the last little bit of time we have, I'd love to open the floor for some questions if people have them for Natalie. You can just unmute yourself or raise your hand.
did you want to pause the recording at this point, or
Yeah, I can do that, sure.